Good evening. I hate to interrupt your conversation because it's always fun to see your friends and people. But we have a little business to do. What I will do, you have your little booklet like this, don't you? Well, I'll be on that page 6 is what I will start out on. And it's the warning. So I will read the warning. It's not that you're stupid, it's just that I have to do it. Warning, 2022 River Valley's Unified School District Annual Meeting. April 26, 2022 at the Dover Town Hall Common, 189 Taft Brook Road, Dover at 7 p.m. We're a little slow, we're a little late, it's all right. The legal voters of the towns of Dover and Wardsboro, Vermont, are hereby notified and warned that pursuant to the Title 17 VSA Section 2655, they are to meet at the Dover Town Hall, Dover Town Common, 189 Taft Brook Road, Dover, Vermont, on Tuesday, April the 26th, 2022 at 7 p.m. to act upon the following articles to wit. Article 12, to be voted by Australian ballot for the Dover board members. The polls will open for Australian ballot voting at 10 a.m. and remain open until 7 p.m. on Tuesday, May 17, 2022, at the Corinthia Base Lodge, 14 Corinthia Road, Dover. Article 12, to be voted from the floor for the Wardsboro board member. The town meeting will commence at 1 p.m. on Saturday, May 21, 2022, at 21 Main Street, Wardsboro. 71. Excuse me, 71, yeah. Please note that the 2022 annual meeting is in-person meeting. The meeting will follow all relevant and most updated recommendations for the health and safety guidance issued by the state of Vermont et al. Article number 1 is now to elect a moderator to serve for the fiscal year July 1, 2022 to June 30th, 2023. Part B of that article is to set a stipend of $200 per meeting for the moderator. I am the moderator. I've been the moderator in Wardsboro for decades, and I've been warning for you guys for decades. I suffered a pretty significant stroke this last year, and then I developed another issue of the brain. It's sort of like you get wobbly and stuff, but I turned 80 this year, and I am not going to run for the Townsend moderator's position, and I am not willing to run for this position. It has nothing to do with you people. It's that I am not quite what I should be, and I don't want to impose that on any of you.
You said Townsend, you mean Wardsboro?
Yeah, Townsend and Wardsboro. I told them both the same thing. So you're to start thinking right now, is there anyone here, and I hope there is, willing to run for the moderator?
I think she put her hand up over there.
Okay. No?
I think the lady over there put her hand up. She's fixing her.
Would you say your name, please?
I didn't raise my hand. I was sitting right here, but I'm embarrassed. I don't know what the job entails.
It's a fun job, and it's easy to learn. It is. It really is, and it's very enlightening. You make wonderful friends. You work on challenging issues. You help your community move along.
Sounds like your brain's working just fine.
Not that good, my friend.
Can I ask a question? I'm not raising my hand. And maybe, Rich, this could be you. Could you explain some of the duties that the moderator would have to do? Are there time commitments beyond the annual meeting? Those sorts of things.
Very little, generally very little. Most of the stuff is in the meeting, just before the meeting or after the meeting. You know, if something has come up that needs following by the moderator, for example.
In the one meeting we did beforehand.
Yeah, and the one meeting beforehand and after the meeting, sometimes you have little things
You
you
have
need
to
to do.
sign the notes or something.
Well, you have to sign the notes to say that you were actually there. But that's about all there is to it. But it's an interesting thing, and it's a bit of a challenging thing, but it's a wonderful thing to do. I've really enjoyed it.
There's also a training class in February
Yeah.
for moderators.
Yeah, you can go to the training class, but quite frankly, I know it's boring as hell. Sir?
I'm considering it, but I have to talk to my wife first.
That's way good. I'm interested.
All right. You have two people expressing interests. How would you like to settle this?
Dr. B, for the minutes, could I just get their names, please?
Yeah. Your names, please?
Aaron Dringus,
How do I spell the last name?
D as in David, R-I-N-G-U-S.
And
Meredith Black.
Meredith Black.
Black,
Block,
not the color. Right.
thank you.
Yeah. So, since you have two people that have expressed interest, there are several ways you can vote on it. You can ask, would they accept a hand vote? You know, like, put up your hand if you want to vote for this person, put up your hand if you want to vote for this person. And generally, that's what happens. And when it happens, the person who has the most votes is the moderator. And they start right then.
No.
I'm just like, I love the look on the faces. Well,
No, we do ours July 1st to June 30th, so that way the
I'm
moderator,
stuck with it still.
he has to go through this meeting.
yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Just a question or a thought. I don't think either person has given it a lot of thought, perhaps, before coming here, and they need to understand Robert's rules of order. And so I don't think it's, quite honestly, I don't think it's the easiest job when there's controversies and motions going back and forth. It's a complicated job. Boy, I'm not putting up my hand to volunteer. Is there a way that maybe voting for moderator could happen at the town meetings or by Australian ballot later, so that it doesn't have to be decided tonight, and give those people a chance to research the position a bit? Is there some other way to do this than just from the floor now?
Yeah, go ahead, Rich.
I think Andy and I had a long discussion, so we're going to both kind of answer this. So we asked what happened if nobody wanted to do it tonight. So we do ours. It's different than the towns. As Carolyn was saying, usually you elect a moderator at town meeting from the floor, and if you do that, as soon as that vote's over, this moderator walks away, waves goodbye, and a new person comes up. We as a board, when we set up this district, didn't feel that would work very well. We wanted to be able to have the person go till the end of the year, just like we elect our clerk and our treasurer. On the town side, the clerk, once the election's over, they're no longer the clerk if they didn't run. So we wanted to do it this way. We asked what would happen if nobody ran, and we had a little bit of a discussion, and we feel that it is the duty of this board, of this group, to elect a moderator. It doesn't say may or will or could or should, it says you shall. So we should elect a moderator. If that person who's elected looks into it and says, I didn't think this was a job I was signing up for, then they can resign, and then we would have to deal with that, and we would check with the Secretary of State. The reason we can't vote at the town meetings is because it's one group with two towns. So you can't have like Wardsboro vote and then Dover vote separately. It has to be at a meeting of this group. And that throws us another little curveball also. That anything?
That's true, and the only other thing that Sue brought up was voting by Australian ballot. And in order to change how we elect a moderator or any other office from a floor vote to an Australian ballot, this group would have to vote at a warned meeting to change that method of voting. So we're kind of stuck. But we do have two folks interested.
Go ahead. Yes, ma'am.
Hi there. I feel like we have two fairly young people who think they're interested. I think they can learn the job pretty quickly. It's complicated, but yeah, lots of people do it.
Well, I'll speak to the validity of these two. I can't speak for the other candidate, but this candidate lives with an attorney. She's fairly good at navigating like the minutia of rules, and it isn't that complicated. So I speak to her to confidence that she could handle the job, and presumably the other candidate as well.
Any other questions? Any other comments?
How are we on?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm Bob's wife, Carol, and so I've been watching him for all these years. And I know in the beginning, he did a lot of reading in Robert's Rules of Order. I think he talked to the state to make sure he knew if any disagreements came up. The most difficult part I've really seen with him in Wardsboro is if there was a heated debate over some article. And then his job is to keep everything civil and courteous and to not let one single person hog the floor, so to speak. And that might be the most difficult part.
Any other comments? Any other concerns? And I will ask our chairman, how would you like me to
No, it's to them. We got to vote.
You understand that we have to vote, and we have no way out of that. Yes, ma'am.
So would the candidates or the people who were interested tell us a little bit about themselves? I know I don't know either person.
Would you mind?
Sure. Would like to know a little bit of background.
Is this your police record, or is it?
I'm a teacher at Leland Gray. I'm also an acting administrator there. I've been helping with discipline since late January. I've been teaching there for 2 years. I teach Spanish, high school Spanish, well, middle school and high school Spanish. I've been teaching for 17 years.
Hi, I'm Meredith. I moved to Dover last year, and I've been really looking for a way to get involved and be part of everything. So my daughter, Joey, goes to kindergarten at Dover, and I don't know what else I can tell you, but...
Meredith is a real estate administrative specialist.
Oh, yeah.
And a homemaker, and like I said, tolerance and order.
Then does somebody have to nominate each person?
Absolutely. So if you want to nominate someone, raise your hand and say who you want to nominate. Yes, ma'am. State your name, please.
I'm Stephanie Lasofsky. B as in boy, L as in Larry, E as in Edward, S as in sunshine. Do you know all that?
No.
Okay. All right, great.
She's got it.
I'd like to nominate Meredith Block for moderator.
Okay.
Any other nominations? Yes, ma'am.
My name's Geraldine Golette, and I'd like to nominate this young man over here.
So you're both nominated.
Second?
No, no.
So, as I said to you, there's two ways of doing this. You can do it for both of them by vote, by the mouth, or by the hand. What's your preference?
Hand?
Yeah, it's fine.
All right, so it's by hand.
Nominations closed.
The nominations are now closed, and we have a call for the vote.
Dr. B, I wonder if it might not be appropriate to call for a paper ballot? Do you think?
You can do either way. If you're feeling we should, let's do it. You guys have any objections?
I don't care either way.
All right.
Yeah,
All right.
You're good?
We're going by paper ballot?
No, I thought it was a lot of pressure maybe.
I don't.
Just having raised their hands at a meeting to all of a sudden, we all raise our hands and vote on it. They seem to be okay with it.
You saw what a wonderful crowd this is.
That's right.
Come on.
I can handle it.
All right.
All right. So, we now ask you, the public, who have a serious job here. This is meaningful. It's not just something that, got written in a book someplace and that people thought it was an interesting idea. So here we go. There are 2 people to be voted on. You want to split it?
We can, sure.
Go ahead.
So, let's see, we have a last name of Dringus and a last name of Block. So Block first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask everybody to stand who would like to vote for Meredith Block. And when I point to you, sit down. So everybody stand who would like to vote for Meredith Block. And when I point directly at you, sit down. Please. Now I'd like everybody to stand who would like to vote for Aaron Dringus. And the same thing, when I point at you, please sit down.
You have one more over here.
Oh, right, okay. And I'm going to count myself as well, voting for Mr. Dringus.
Are other board members allowed to vote, or are they abstaining?
I'm sorry?
Are other board members allowed to vote, or are they abstaining?
They can, yes. And it appears to be a tie. 14 to 14.
Maybe we should you out the
You're allowed to break a tie, Mr. Moderator, if you so choose. You don't have to.
No, since I'm not going to be around for these things, it would be really silly for me to do that. And not very good for you.
Oh my gosh.
Can we get the school board members to vote?
Would you folks like to vote? I'm not sure.
I've never voted on something from the floor like this.
All right.
We, as a school board, a lot of times will not vote because we feel that, we're not giving our weight behind something or somebody. A lot of times we'll just throw something out there and say, you folks tell us what you want. But the board is allowed to vote, so anybody on the board who feels that they would like to vote, you can let Andy know what your vote is, and then Andy can calculate it.
There's always a coin toss.
Why don't they serve together?
You have to elect a moderator. There's got to be one person in charge. Well, then one of you could say, I'd like to withdraw my name, and the other person can do it for this year, and the other person can run next year if you guys wanted to do that. But there's always a chance a third person could come up next year and say they want it. It's unfortunately, it's not an easy thing when you have a split vote.
They can agree to appoint us.
Well, again, one of them could say that I'd like to withdraw my name from consideration. That would be,
We could rack paper scissors. I don't know how to do it. Do we need to
See what they're really made of.
we can do a coin toss. I don't care.
Arm wrestle.
If that's how you want to do it. I mean, I don't know if there's another way to solve the problem.
Mr. Moderator,
Sir,
I'm at a loss of, I'm not sure, with you not,
We could raise.
got a hand up.
yes, sir.
With Dawn, she can do it this year, and I just think about it next year.
Make the news.
I don't really want to do it.
We make the news.
Don't give away.
I know, we're happy.
What do you think? You like that idea? Okay. All right. Okay, so the consensus seems to be that the moderator feels we should have a paper ballot and see about the results of a paper ballot. And you know, if you want to challenge his ruling on that, feel free. If not, we're going to do a paper ballot. What do you think?
That's great.
Paper ballot? Oh my
are you
gosh.
set up for that?
I'm not.
How do you
Well, we got blue. All right. Yeah, right? All right. So now. Okay, folks, we're going to have to share pens and paper, but what I would like you to do is come up here in single file, give your name to Michelle and I, if you would like to vote. We'll check you off the list, and you have to be a Dover voter or a Wardsboro voter. Grab a piece of paper and write Meredith.
Could you write their names down somewhere where we can see them?
Good idea, yes. All right, so.
We're going to do all this in 6 hours. Our cameraman, you vote. Damn it.
How come you're not looking it up? Oh.
Yep, I think I do.
Just kidding, I'm really
Enjoy it. Just sing a song. Vote for mom.
Okay, don't be shy, folks. Come on up and vote. You want to vote? Right in that box. Hold it down, put it in the box.
Yeah. going to close the poll.
It doesn't stay open.
Ladies and gentlemen, hello. Would you like to know your results? Thank you for doing this. Thank you for being kind to each other and laugh and see some of the funny parts of it. But the serious business has found a person. Meredith, you got 15 votes. And Sir Aaron, you are the new moderator. Would you stand up and give a speech?
Thank you. I appreciate it, guys. I'll do a good job for you guys as moderator starting in July.
Meredith, I'd like to thank you for running, for being the charming person that you are. And I hope that you find some other hooch you can fill here. All right?
I would love to.
Great. Any other questions or concerns before we move on? Oh, yeah, we have to vote on the stipend. Well, actually, they voted on the stipend because I included it with A. So you get $200. Not now? All right, so we're moving on, ladies and gentlemen. Article 2, to elect a clerk to serve for the fiscal year July 1, 2022 to June 30th, 2023. To set a stipend of $2,400 for the clerk. To set a stipend of $400 for an assistant clerk to be appointed and used at the direction of the clerk.
I'd like to move that.
Would you like to move it? Yes, sir.
I'd like to nominate Andy McLean.
Let's say you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
I'll second.
Jerry seconds, and,
Rich would like to explain this article, and there's a reason for this.
So this article looks a little different than the last few times we voted on this. It's usually just A and B, but our clerk came to us this year and said that he'd like to be able to appoint an assistant clerk. It looks like we may be changing the way we do some election stuff, and it will require the Wardsboro town clerk to assist, and he didn't think it was fair, so he wanted to reduce his salary and put it towards Wardsboro clerk. But we as a board felt we call on Andrew a lot as our clerk to answer questions, to guide us, to make sure that we're doing things right, and then he comes and does our minutes for us at these meetings. So we felt that Andrew is not somebody who's going to waste our money or your money, and if he needs to be help, and he wouldn't have asked for it unless he needed it, and we thought $400 is not a lot of money, and it may not be needed, but it's available to him if it is needed. So we would ask the board did approve this unanimously amongst ourselves. So thank you.
Any questions or concerns about this? Would you like to have Andrew talk about it a little bit?
Is he willing to serve again?
Are you willing to serve again?
I am willing to serve again.
Anything else you'd like to say?
So I didn't even ask Michelle if she wanted to get paid. I didn't think that was fair to put her on the spot like that. I feel it's my job to make sure there's money there to pay her. We're asking her to do an important job with a lot of trust. The board's talking about an Australian ballot to change her articles of agreement this year, which will require her running a separate election. It's a lot to ask, and I'm sure she would do it for nothing. But I felt that it's my job to make sure that there is something there for her when we entrust her with that kind of a duty. And as far as my stipend goes, I'm more than willing to reduce that to $2,000. The job is not as demanding as it was the first few years, and I'm comfortable with that if that's what you would like. And I proposed that to the board, and they denied that request. And it's flattering, but honestly, I have half a mind to make the motion myself to reduce it. But I'm gonna let them make that call. That's all I gotta say.
Do you understand this article now? Do you have any further questions you would like to ask about it? Does anyone else wish to run for this office?
Call the question.
Huh?
Call the question.
Yes, ma'am, I shall call the question. So, to elect a clerk to serve for the fiscal year July 1, 2022 to June 30th, 2023. To set a stipend of $2,400 for the clerk. To set a stipend of $400 for an assistant clerk to be appointed and used at the discretion of the clerk. All in favor of this?
Aye.
Any opposed? You are back in the box.
Thank you, sir.
Article 3, to elect a treasurer to serve for the fiscal year July 1, 2022 to June 30th, 2023, to set a stipend of $2,400 for the treasurer. Any questions? Any concerns? Anyone want to run for this?
I nominate Mr. Marco Tellini.
How says Mr. Tolini?
I'm very happy to accept. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other election information we need, like anyone else that wants to do this? Hearing none, I will read it again. To elect a treasurer to serve for the fiscal year July 1, 2022 to June 30, 2023, and to set the stipend of $2,400 for the treasurer. Are you ready to hear the question?
Yes.
You'd like to call the question?
Yes.
All in favor of this article signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank
It's
you.
passed. And thank you all for your interest, for laboring. Moving on to Article 4. Shall the voters of River Valley's Unified School District set the annual stipend for school directors at $2,000 and for the chair at $2,500? Anyone like to call the question?
I'll move it.
Second.
Marcos.
Carolyn, second.
I second.
Carol, second. Do we have any questions that people would like to ask, explanations, so forth? Hearing none, seeing none. All in favor of this motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passed. Shall the voters, this is Article 5. 5. Shall the voters of the River Valley's Unified School District approve mileage reimbursement at the federal reimbursement rate for the month in which the mileage occurred? Someone like to move it? I'll move it. Carol moved it.
I'll second it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Jeremy.
Jeremy would like to speak to the question.
So, Jeremy's father would like to say, just because we get asked, so as of April 4th, the rate was 58.5 cents a mile. Back in December, it was 54, but we all know what's happened in the last few months. So that's why we do it by the month and whatever the federal reimbursement rate is. And this is for staff, or it's not for the board members to go back and forth to the treasurer, but if people have to do school business, mainly staff, administrative assistant people that have to do bring stuff to the central office, and that's where the mileage is. So we recommend that you approve it.
He won't even give his kid money. How's that? And he was working for you.
I paid them well.
All right. Have you moved it?
Yes, it moves up.
Do you know what this rate is?
It's just that you want to.
Yeah, 58, right now it's 58 point.
Sure?
Yeah.
I thought they just changed.
No, it'll change at the end of the month.
Okay.
Beginning of next.
Shall the voters of River Valley's Unified School District approve mileage reimbursement at the federal reimbursement rate for the month in which the mileage occurred? Do you have any other questions, any concerns?
Ready to vote.
He's calling for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. We're now moving on to Article 6. Thank you.
Book stuff on.
Yeah. There we go. Article 6. Shall the voters of the River Valley's Unified School District authorize the school board to withdraw money from the reserve fund to offset the homestead tax rate, but not more than $75,000? Andy, would you explain this motion to them, just for people who might not understand?
I'm thinking maybe one of the board members might know more about it than I do. Richie, you want to take this one?
Yeah. If you go to page 18 in your book, it's a 3-year comparison rate, and that shows what we anticipate the tax rate to be. Of course, we never know what the tax rate's going to be, and that's why we like to have the meetings later. because our tax rates are affected a lot by what happens under the Golden Dome in the middle of the state. And things like yield and per pupil expenses have not been figured out. But this year we were very lucky, and they did away with an excess spending penalty. We're in our final year of a merger grant that gives us 2 cents off our tax rate. So we, in the past, have recommended upwards of $250,000. This year, we're recommending $75,000. It should result in a tax rate that is slightly less than last year, but unfortunately, all our CLAs have gone down too, and that CLA is your common level of appraisal, which is what your property is valued at according to the state, and then they use that as a formula. Last year, the CLA was in the CLA is on page, bear with me for one, on the bottom of page 10. This year, Dover's at 94.49 and Wardsboro's at 87.72%, which is down a little bit from the previous year. In 22, Dover was 101% and Wardsboro was at 95%. So the good news is if you sold your house, you probably got more than you thought you were going to get. The bad news is it hurts on us with the common level of appraisal. We recommend that you pass this motion, and it's also not as high as it has been in years past, and we'll talk about that under Article 10. There's currently $625,000 in the general reserve fund, so it's not going to deplete it, but we also try not to spend too much so that we have that in for a few years if we ever have unexpected expenses, so we don't have to artificially raise the tax rate for 1 year.
Do you understand this? And if so, do you have any questions? Yes, ma'am.
I'd
Sir.
like to move the article.
Article 6?
Yeah.
Jeremy would like us to move Article 6. All in favor of
Need
Article
a second?
Huh?
No.
Carol,
We
second.
moved it.
Oh,
We
okay.
moved it, Ernie. We didn't.
Yeah, I'm just explaining this one. All right, we're voting. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Article 7. Shall the voters of River Valley's Unified School District approve the school board to expend 6,255,575, period, which is the amount the school board has determined to be necessary for the ensuing fiscal year. It is estimated that this proposed budget, if approved, will result in education spending of $21,200, per equalized pupil. This projected spending per equalized pupil is 6.4% higher than spending for the current year. Want to move it?
I'll move the
No, I
question.
have some questions.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we'll
just
move
move
the
the
article. Yes, I move the article, Article 7.
Article is moved. You have a question, ma'am?
I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
The money doesn't seem to amount to very much, but I have, on page 17 of the construction projects, you have something proposed for $5,000. You also have lawn care, which is suddenly up to $3,000.
Jerry, can you please give us, on the right-hand side, to make everybody's life easier, there's
Yeah.
a little number. Can you tell us what numbers you're looking at, please?
Sure.
I think
I'm
lawn
looking
care
at-
is
I'm sorry,
296.
I'm looking at number 282 on page 17, and I'm looking at lawn care, which is number 296. And then I have other questions after. Oh, and also I'm looking at and I didn't mark it down, but it's the electricity bill.
Okay, so, and what are your questions?
I'd like to know what kind of project is going to require $5,000 in the budget. I'd like to know why you're spending $3,000 on lawn care. And I'd also like to know whether or not solar is working and why we're paying $44,000 for electricity.
So you gotta remember, I'll start with 282,
Okay.
construction projects.
Yep.
That's just for general repairs. It's not
Okay.
highlighted for any specific item.
Alright.
Bigger projects, we fund that out of the capital, which is a couple questions away.
Okay.
The lawn care is that we do in-house lawn care at one building. The other building, we don't have the ability to do that. So
Okay.
we have to hire out lawn care for that building.
So that's new this year.
Some line items have moved to be more easily read by people and to make more sense. It used to be clumped in with building cleaning, maintenance, but they broke out lawn care because I believe somebody asked last year about that.
And then number 289, which is the electricity.
Yeah, the electricity is we pay, so we have two buildings we operate. One building has solar, bought into the solar array or is part of the solar array that the Newbrook Elementary School did before they merged with West River. And then we have a solar array at the Dover building that was built and done while Dover was in, so we couldn't, we were both tied into different agreements, but we have a lot of buildings that we cover. We have two buildings and I think we save about 10 to 15% on the electric.
Okay, is the solar working here? Are we
Yes.
getting, we're actually, so
Right.
you're saving 15%.
The 44,000 is our net, is what we net out.
Okay.
And
so-
again, it's an estimate over the next year. There's, I believe Green Mountain Power is getting an increase, so.
All right, and the last question that I have is is on page 16. And it deals with 258, which is the total principal office, 259, 329,322. And the question is this: if we have 85 students in a school in Dover, why do we need a full-time principal?
Because we actually have a principal and a half. We have a 1.5 administrator because we run two separate buildings.
I understand that. So you have a half a principal in Wardsboro, but you have a full-time principal in Dover.
Correct.
So why do we need a full-time principal in Dover?
Because the principal has a lot of duties, and we tried it in the past with a part-time principal back when Frank Vera was here, and it doesn't work. We need somebody who's available.
I can only speak from experience as a former teaching principal in a school of 150 students, K-6. So I personally, I know times have changed. Personally, I don't think we need a full-time principal.
And I believe the board has discussed it several times, and the board feels that a full-time principal is necessary. We have a lot of transients people, a lot of people who come in for a year or two. Over the last couple of years with the COVID testing, our principals have been given things that we never would have thought of or dreamed of 5 years ago. When somebody in a class tests positive, the principal's got to become a nurse, a CDC employee. It's been a very difficult position, and there's a lot of stuff that the administrator has to do. There's a lot of balls up in the air. We have two focus groups in our schools. We have the International Baccalaureate program in the Dover building, and we have a very well-operating STEAM program that's being operated in the Wardsboro district. We've had a lot of additional services. We've increased foreign language into two buildings. I don't think we could ever get a principal to work as a part-time principal in the Dover building and keep them more than a year. And it's your right to, make a motion to drop the budget, but voters don't have line item responsibility on the budget. It's the board does.
Thank you for that explanation.
Thank you.
Any further questions?
I've got one point to make too.
Okay.
If you turn to page in your books, it's page 10 in the lower left-hand corner, and that's the major budget changes year over year. So our salaries increased approximately $73,000. That's across all spectrums, certified, administrative, support staff. Benefits increased $44,188. A lot of that's outside of our control. The state now negotiates a healthcare package, and we don't get to negotiate that locally. The assessment purchase services, there's a reduction in that. There's an increase here, but that was because we also moved some stuff around. And a few years ago, the legislature passed a law that all special services needed to run through the central office. So the central office bills us for that. So we have some reductions on the other side in staff in the building. It wasn't a net, it didn't equal out to be a net zero. It was a little bit more. There's some different benefits that had to be offered through the central office than we used to offer in either the Dover or Wardsboro building. And the building ops, we had a water usage increase, and we're looking at, and the water usage increases, the North Branch Fire District has decided that those of you that had gone to Dover meetings for years, the Dover school put away surpluses for several years to put a sewer line from the school down to the North Branch Fire District treatment plant. And we always never paid for those services, and the town and the school didn't pay to them, and they didn't pay to us. The North Branch has decided now that they do want us to pay, and that they're going to pay for anything that they do with us. So there's a little increase there, and then power is going up. Green Mountain Power is getting, was approved for an increase. There was a reduction in tuition and secondary tuition, but again, that's just projected. I don't have a crystal ball. I always wished I did. But we don't know how many students are going to be there next year. So that was kind of a quick overview.
Yes, sir.
Mostly a request, as much as anything. I want to commend you folks on taking a difficult subject and putting it so that we can actually understand it. But one thing that I see more and more of, and it's hard to fit things in here, is I see a lot of abbreviations. Is there any way we could have a key somewhere in the back?
And we've talked about that on this, on the account titles. And what happened was, a few years ago, the state of Vermont said, we've been arguing for over 25 years since Act 60 started. There's no common chart of accounts throughout the state. So we don't know what schools and other districts are really spending on direct services. So the state of Vermont actually, as part of the pressure, came up with a chart of common accounts that they wanted everybody to go to. And in Dover, Wardsboro, and Wyndham Central, with the mergers of several of the schools, we went to that common chart of accounts. And our financial people hate it. It is the worst system that they said they've ever seen, but it was, what the state got. It's so bad that the state has stopped the implementation of it to those schools that haven't picked it up. Unfortunately, a lot of these descriptions cannot be changed because that's how they come out. So we did, Kate, the vice chairman, and I met a few different times over the winter during the creation of the budget to go through, because we had the same issue. We would look at something and say, what the heck is that? So we can usually answer your questions. If you have a question on a specific one, let us know and we get it for you if we don't have it tonight.
Any further questions or concerns?
So some of the abbreviations then. So there's a lot of LEASs. Does that mean the individual schools?
Well, give me an example.
So let's start right at the beginning for both budget. Go
Yeah,
to line 9.
Which page?
What line?
Page
number?
12. Page 12, you start with the very first line 5.
Okay, so page 12 is income. Page 12 is income, it's not
Right,
expenses.
just LEASs.
Yeah, what's the little number on the right? I don't, it's not jumping out at.
5, right at the top.
Oh,
Tuition public.
yeah, it's public schools.
So it's all the schools included.
It's all the public schools that we tuition to.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, no, it's tuition, it's income, so it's public school tuition into us for our preschool program.
Okay, so it stands for, like Carol was saying, local education agency.
I think.
Agency something. Okay, thank you. There were others, but I can't.
Any further questions or concerns on Article 7? It's getting late. You folks have jobs. It's getting tired. The kids probably want to go to bed. So if you don't mind, I will not read through Article 7. I will just ask you to now say yes or no on this Article 7. All in favor of Article 7?
Aye.
Any opposed? There being no opposition, this measure passes. So 6 and 7 are done. We're moving on to Article 8, which I shall read. Shall the voters of the River Valley's Unified School District approve the school board to move any surplus from the 2021-2022 budget into the general reserve fund to be reserved for a future use as approved by the voters? Could you describe what that is?
So basically, I think it might be a good idea for me to defer to Richie again. Richie, do you want to take this?
Sure, huh?
He's been doing it a while.
So, as we, in Article 6, asked you to approve moving money out of the general reserve fund, we don't know what our numbers are going to be until, sometime in August, they file what's called a stat report with the state, where we balance out any income received and any expenses. We asked that money get put right into our reserve fund. Usually, we used to wait till the following year and say to you, at the following year, that, hey, last year we had a surplus of this. We decided when Act 60 came around to stop doing that because we were afraid that the state was going to say, hey, you had extra money. So on top of the $7 million you guys sent us and the $2 million from Wardsboro, we're going to take all that extra money too. So we put it right into the reserve fund so it's not sticking out there for them to see it as a surplus. And then we ask you folks how you want to spend it, as we did in Article 6 and we will again in Article 10.
Any questions about this? You ready to pass this or send it away? All right, Article 8. Shall the voters of the River Valley's Unified School District approve the school board to move any surplus from the 2021-2022 budget into the general reserve fund to be reserved for a future use as approved by you, the voters? Any further questions or concerns? All in favor of this Article 8, signify by saying aye, please. Aye. Any opposed, please? There are none. Article 8 has passed. Article 9. Shall the voters of the River Valley's Unified School District set the annual tuition rate to approved independent schools at $19,200? Burr and Burton sending school tuition. That's what that is. For the 2022-2023 school year. Someone like to move this?
So moved.
Jeremy
and Carol.
Carol said.
Second.
I speak that.
Her tag team.
You're doing a great job.
This guy wants to talk again. Go ahead.
Jerry, go ahead. So you're going to give any parents that want to send their children up to $19,200 if they go to Brattleboro.
It's any school.
If they choose to go to the mountain school, it's only $222, so the parents get it.
So just a real quick background on this is we get asked why is this on every year. The state law requires us to pay the statewide average tuition for any grades that you don't operate in your building. Both Dover and Wardsboro, one of the reasons we were able to combine was because we had a similar structure. We were both pre-K through 6 buildings. And before we combined, because of a special petition to Dover and because of a vote on the recommendation of your school board in Wardsboro, both towns have been doing this. So we've told people you don't have to petition this. As long as it gets approved every year, we'll put it in there. But you will see this every year, and you will see the Burr and Burton sending schools tuition. That Burberry claims that if we don't do that, there may not be space for our students, but they've never turned anybody away that we could find out. And this would only be so if you go to approved school and the tuition is $20,000, we don't pay the extra. We only pay up to the 19.2. As Jerry said, if it's less. If you want to go to the Burlington High School and that tuition is $24,000, you're required to pay that. We, by law, are required to pay the tuition to any in-state school that they charge as a public high school. And if you go to page 11, on the top of the page, it kind of gives you a breakdown of what the different school rates are. It's on the top half. It's BAMS, BUHS is at 16.8, Twin Valley at 16.5, Leland Gray's at 19.1, and the statewide average tuition is above that box. It says average 7 through 12 is 17,278. And she made a nice little graph on the upper left that shows where the different students are going. The number of students is not an exact number of students. It's a best case estimate for next year on how we come up with a budget. We kind of look at where other siblings have gone and where their families have gone. And we try to guess, but that's why some years we have a surplus and some years we don't, because some years we guess better than other years.
Yes, ma'am.
Do which of those schools charge that based on their budget per pupil? In other words, is Twin Valley saying we are only spending $16,500 per pupil in our budget?
It's a little more
Is that why they're-
it's a little more convoluted than that because it's based on your weighted average daily membership, which in Dover and Wardsboro we've always had a fraction like a 0.48 or a 0.50, and I've always said if we only had a 0.48 of a student to educate, it would probably be a little difficult. But it is what's considered their allowable tuition, which when the stat report's filed, the state determines what that number is. Some schools can charge capital improvements, like Brattleboro did a big bond a few years ago, and they're making those payments. If they charge that bond through to the schools, they lose some help from the state. So right now, most of them aren't charging that. So it's not their actual expense, but it's an average number that they come up with to set for a tuition rate. I think it's February that all schools have to announce their tuition.
Any further questions? Yes, ma'am.
I'm wondering if the grammar here just needs to be changed slightly, because if someone wants to go to, say, Vermont Academy, that's $19,045, or a school that's an independent school but less than $19,200. This kind of states that they're going to get $19,200.
No, this is the article we've used. We've never paid more than,
Okay.
because
I know
the
you
tuition bill goes to us and we pay off the tuition bill.
Just the way I read it, though, is, I mean,
That's a very good point.
I'll leave it for you to consider for next year.
Yeah, we actually took the wording directly from what the state told us to do when this was first petitioned to us.
Sir?
Yeah, Randy Capitani. Rich, I had a similar question to Sue's, in that on the chart on page 11, midway on the page, placements in the estimated tuitions, why only 1945 for the other independent schools when we're voting to allow up to 19.2? Is that just
That's what we're estimating that they're going to charge, or what they actually told us their charges were.
Okay. Any further questions? Are you ready to vote? If you're ready to vote, this is Article 9. You've seen it. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? No opposed? Thank you for your deliberation, for your interest. Article 10. Shall the voters of the River Valley's Unified School District fund its reserve funds in the following amounts for the 2022/2023 school year and fund those reserves with a transfer from the general reserve fund. And you'll see it's split. Capital improvements, 1 is building 70,000, 2 is transportation 20,000. Would anyone like to?
No.
Hi, Andy.
Jeremy, Carol.
It's been moved, so go ahead.
No, I don't have to.
Does anyone else have a question? Yes, ma'am. No? Oh, you were scratching your head. That means it's working.
On page 11 is the description.
Yeah. Page 11 is the description if you want to look through this. All right? Should we run it? All in favor of Article 10 signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Article 10 has passed. Article 11. Any other business that may be legally be addressed, open discussion for a formal purpose, board representation from the town, no action to be taken, this is informational only, update on the new website approved at last year's annual meeting in public. Would either one of you, anyone on this board choose to comment on this?
Yeah, I'd like to talk about board representation really quickly, and then Chad is going to talk about the website, because he's on that committee. So board representation, when we formed the district, we actually had been in discussions with Marlboro, Dover, and Wardsboro, and everybody at that time felt it was very important to have equal representation, so no one town ruled over another town. And at that time, Marlboro had more population than Dover, had more population than Wardsboro. And I know Randy served on that committee with me and Dwight, and I don't think anybody else here served on that. But we actually really, we thought, and I thought, we set it a number high enough that we would always have 3 boards. We said you'll have 3 representatives up to a certain number. And we actually didn't do that. The state, I guess, didn't feel that was appropriate, so they changed it, and I wasn't quick enough to realize it. So with the last census, Dover grew quite a bit more than Wardsboro did. And if you look at the numbers based on our articles of agreement, there should be a 4-to-2 representation on the board. The board's had several discussions, including with our attorney, and although it's not a unanimous decision and the board has not decided what we want to bring to you, the board felt that equal representation would best serve the communities. So we are going to be bringing to you sometime this fall a special meeting to vote on changing the articles. And what we found is if we want to keep equal representation, 3 members from each town, we would just have to be, you would have a candidate from each town run each year for a 3-year term, but both towns get to vote on them. That's kind of why Andy had asked for that extra money for the assistant clerk, because you would have to have the clerks from both towns there. We're not, the legislature is also looking at maybe changing the rules under which unified districts work. So our attorneys suggested that we may not be ready to do it until later summer, to see what the legislature votes on and what they make for a law, and to see how that could affect us. So there's going to be a lot more coming on that, but we just wanted to make sure that everybody understood that we were going to have some discussions and we are going to need some input from the public. And we will do what we've done in the past. We'll hold meetings in both towns. Our new moderator will get to practice his skills after July.
Or her.
Or no.
Yeah.
No, but we voted ours. Anyways, so that's kind of that. And if there has been some discussions at the board level, if anybody has any questions, we can talk about it after the meeting, or if you have a quick question tonight. We don't have a lot of the answers for you.
Any questions, any concerns? You're looking at Article 11, and it's been read to you.
Chad wanted to do the website. Chad wanted to speak about the website.
Ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, go.
So as the voters had voted last year to allow up to $30,000 to be spent on a new website that will encompass both Wardsboro Elementary, Dover Elementary School, and the district office. We had quite I think it was 21 or 22 different proposals after our initial RFP. We narrowed that down to 3 and ultimately deciding to choose Edgeworks Creative, which is based out of Waterbury. So we're very glad to have a Vermont company representing us in this procedure. Their final ticket as of right now, $18,900 to deliver all 3 websites. So we are certainly looking to come in well under the allowed budget that was given by the voters. The only changes that may come to that, if we are adding some additional bells and whistles and some additives that we're looking at as far as making a system that is more accessible, easy to use financially speaking, whether we link in Power School, as well as some payments. Right now we've been very fortunate that school lunches have been at no cost to anyone, but we cannot expect that to go on forever. So integrating payment systems may be something that would require additional resources. But again, we have ample room to work with. I think the committee's done a great job of finding a great company to work with and adhering to the needs of all 3 entities while maintaining the individuality. To give you an idea of where we are, Edgeworks is broken down into 3 different stages. The first one being their discovery and site design. So they've met with us. That would be Cynthia Ryan and Ed Rooney are the primary points of contact with Edgeworks. So that in the first 4 to 6 weeks, as we came up with some examples in working with them to decide what we want the site to look like. From here, we're going to move into the coding aspect. This is solely on their abilities. So we're looking about 6 to 9 weeks from now. They should be finishing up the coding, and then the last stage would be deployment and training, which is only take about 2 days. So we're really looking forward to having this ready to go. And again, if we're looking at the long-term frame, 9 weeks, so just at the end of the school year, perhaps a little bit into June, we should be developing or unleashing a new website. Part of the directive was not just to have a great website to communicate with everyone who is here within the community, current families, current students, but also to utilize as a recruiting tool for families that may be interested in coming to the area. As you all know, being residents here, some of you short-term, some of you quite long-term, that we have a lot to offer and are definitely, as Rich just mentioned, with the changes we may see based on the census, a growing community again, and that's a pretty fantastic opportunity. In addition, they've been utilized their creative team. Wardsboro has tapped them to, again, this is all inclusive in what they are offering, to develop new logos and new mascots for the schools so that they have an additional identity that works to go along in coordination with promoting the STEAM aspect at Wardsboro and the International Baccalaureate program with the Dover School.
If you've read Article 11 closely, you
I have one
realize
last
that
question. I have one last question. I'm sorry.
this is not
Everybody wants to go home.
Yeah.
Is the teacher's contract and the union teacher's contract available to the public to read?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions about Article 11? Sir?
Really just a comment. Nice job this year, so easier to read in some respects. I would really encourage you to put the staff names of all the schools, and both schools in the district, back in the annual report. I think it's nice for the historical record that everybody knows every year who's working in our district. So I would encourage you to do that.
That was a brilliant idea.
So we had that discussion and we actually ran out of pages. There's a couple other things that came out of it.
I know the printing, you can add more pages.
No, but the problem is, but when we add pages, we have to add 4 pages.
Yeah, you do.
And it raises the price quite substantially because we mail them, because it's not just the printing, but it's the postage on top of that. We'll see, one person made a comment that it was way too crowded this year, another person didn't like the colors.
It's all subjective,
Yeah.
no question about it. But ultimately, the information, in my opinion, should be in there.
Yeah. We can see if we can fit that in.
I think it preserves that list for history.
Absolutely.
Because it does change. The elected officials change, the volunteers change, the staff changes. So if you can have it in there, that would be great.
That's a brilliant idea and one extremely useful that everyone would vote on.
So, Dr. B, I can interrupt you for one more minute. Why no more? Well, I want to just recognize Mark Schaubert, who's one of our board members from Dover, who couldn't make it tonight, and he's got a family issue. He worked really hard with Chad and really has been pushing this website for a couple of years now. And Laura Sibilia, because she's up under the Golden Dome, and you guys know that there was a lot of work done this year by Mark and Laura in trying to get rid of get the weights corrected. It really doesn't affect Dover as much as some other towns around us, but it does have an effect on Wardsboro. She's worked very, very hard for our education. And they both couldn't make it. And I'd like to do one other quick thing, and I'm going to embarrass them, but I'd really like to recognize Dr. Backus. Since the early 90s, he's been a moderator. He's been a standard, a great figure.
Isn't late. Let's
No,
finish.
and I really would like to say, as a moderator, I've learned a lot from Dr. B, and I think we should all give him a standing ovation. I'll not speak again.
He says he's not going to say another word. Article 11 is not one that you have to vote on. So we're moving on to Article 12. It's to choose unified school district officers for the following positions. Dover board member to be voted by Australian ballot between 10 a.m. and 7 p.m. on Tuesday, May 17, 2022 at the Corinthia Base Lot, 14 Corinthia Road, Dover. And the Wardsboro board member to be elected from the floor of the Wardsboro town meeting, which will commence at 1 p.m. on Saturday, May 21, 2022 at 71 Main Street, Wardsboro. Does anyone know, or are any of you interested
Well, at Wardsboro, I asked if Chad was willing to run again, and he said he is interested in that.
Thank you, sir. So we have one that's interested. Anyone else who we know is interested?
Is Laura willing to run again for Dover?
So basically, we vote by Australian ballot in Dover at Dover's town meeting to elect our board member from Dover. And Laura Sibilia is on the ballot. She is unopposed. If anybody would like to run as a write-in, you may. Chad's willing to serve when Wardsboro meets and they vote their member from the floor. But any of you are welcome to nominate whoever you like. And
Again, this is not a vote.
exactly, that's right. Thank you, Doctor.
That's just informational. Now, would you guys like to close this meeting?
I
Carol
move
Backus.
that this meeting be adjourned.
Seconded. All in favor of closing this meeting? Aye. Any opposed? Because if you are, you better run fast.